Today, the Taliban welcomed an announcement by President Trump that all U.S. troops should leave Afghanistan by the end of the year. But there are questions about how that announcement was received by the U.S. military and by U.S. and Afghan negotiators who are in peace talks right now. And Nick Schifrin joins me to explain. So, Nick, what exactly did the president and his national security advisor have to say about this?
The Afghanistan experts I'm talking to say that this undermines the Afghan government and U.S. diplomats and reduces the pressure on the Taliban. Remember that the U.S. deal with the Taliban it signed in February said that the U.S. would withdraw all troops by spring 2021 if and only if the Taliban broke with al-Qaeda. And that condition has been repeated by diplomats again and again, even last week, that withdrawal is conditions-based. There were no conditions mentioned by President Trump and initially by Robert O'Brien either. Military and intelligence officials said they haven't even had the time to assess whether the Taliban has actually broken with al-Qaeda. And everybody I've talked to today says that without that condition, the Taliban probably won't offer any concessions and kind of lie in wait until the U.S. withdraws. Now, the announcement could put pressure on the Afghan government to agree to some concessions the Taliban are asking for. However, Afghan officials told me today, Judy, that the U.S. is telling them that this is not a new policy, that effectively they could ignore the president's tweets. What all these people I'm talking to say to me today is that this signals the White House priority is not the Taliban al-Qaeda condition. It's not what's happening in Afghanistan. It is the U.S. election. It is the desire to get out of Afghanistan as quickly as possible. And Judy, that could make any progress in what was already a difficult peace talk all the more difficult.
PBS NewsHour was airing, well, they had a news piece on Trump pulling out of Afghanistan. And their guest they had on was this military expert. And this military expert was like, yeah, Trump pulling out of Afghanistan is putting, all peace talks at risk between Afghanistan and the Taliban. And is like, wait, people don't know the Taliban was CIA funded? People don't know that the Taliban got all their arms from the United States? And why are they in peace talks when it's like imagine if in the early 2000s, post 9/11, you were here like, all right, well, now we have peace talks between like Iraq and the Taliban. You'd be like, what? That doesn't make sense. This military group attacked us. Why are we allowing them to like inhabit countries and act peacefully when they're beheading people? So it's so frustrating to me that there is a publicly funded, as well as through donors, a news organization that is defending staying in Afghanistan for longer, and their logic for doing so is strengthened by bringing on a guest who's saying that there needs to be peace talks between Afghanistan and the Taliban. This doesn't make sense.
That's nonsense.
Right.
What a joke. And you know what's worse is that there's the saying that goes, if you know of someone doing something wrong and you stay quiet, you're helping with the problem.
Yeah.
PBS is, I'm paraphrasing obviously, PBS is part of the problem. If they're not checking people, it's amazing. It's amazing. I was watching PBS just yesterday, and the way they were talking about how every single thing they said about Trump was biased and opinionated. And I'm sitting there watching this as if like I'm watching this to learn stuff. And instead of learning things, I'm watching and listening to people complain. That's what I heard. Complaints. It was Brooks and David and the lady. And I used to love PBS NewsHour with Lehrer, with Jim Lehrer, years ago before he was found guilty as part of the Me Too movement. You remember? You remember Lehrer?
I do not.
His name was, I'll show you right now. This is Jim Lehrer. He used to be in charge of PBS NewsHour before he was found guilty, I guess, as part of a harassment series of lawsuits against them. And
Oh.
one thing I find so fascinating of the Me Too movement's victims, I should say not victims. Well,
Some of them.
not the women, but the victims that ended up in jail.
Okay.
Is that all of them have a very similar last name. It's so crazy, dude.
Well,
They
Bill.
all have a similar last name. Hoffman,
Uh-huh.
you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Dustin
so
Hoffman.
yeah.
Who else? Anthony Weiner.
Anthony Weiner is the funniest one because his name is very phallic.
No, I mean, and it's not just funny, but very ironic because his wife was Hillary Clinton's right-hand woman.
Yeah, that's probably why that happened.
And then guess what else? She was born in Israel.
Oh, look at that.
Another lady.
Yeah. So
No, she was born in Michigan. Her parents were born in Israel. Sorry,
So-
that's what I mean.
commentary on the Me Too movement, I think it has to be stated that one of the most ridiculous things that ever happened in this past year, 2019, it may have happened, was when the lady came out who worked for Joe Biden, who stated that Joe Biden raped her, and then Nancy Pelosi was asked in a news conference, like what about this whole thing that happened with Joe Biden, and and she got really angry at this reporter and says, we don't talk about that here. It can't be Joe Biden because Joe Biden is he's Joe Biden, and it's like, man, you have no standards. It's a perfect example of like how the left goes so far to protect their own.
I have complete respect for the whole Me Too movement. I have 4 daughters and 1 son. And there's a lot of excitement around the idea that women will be heard and be listened to. There is also due process. And the fact that Joe Biden is Joe Biden, there's been statements from his campaign, or not his campaign, but his former employees who ran his offices and the rest, that there was never any record of this. There was never any record. And that nobody ever came forward, or nobody ever came forward to say something about it apart from the principal involved. I am so proud. The happiest day for me this week was to support Joe Biden for President of the United States. He's a person of great integrity, a great concern for the American people. He authored the Violence Against Women Act when he was the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the 90s. He has been an advocate for funding it all along since then. And I believe that he will be a great president of the United States. He is the personification of hope and optimism and authenticity for our country, a person of great values. So I want to remove all doubt in anyone's mind. I have a great comfort level with the situation as I see it, with all the respect in the world for any woman who comes forward, with all the highest regard for Joe Biden. And that's what I have to say about that. Thank you. Excuse me.
It's absurd.
Oh, it's scary, dude. But see, that the thing is it all revolves around these same exact people, man.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this in the last episode, I guess you want to call it episode podcast. But that for some weird reason, we keep allowing it to happen. So what do they call it? What do they say when you keep making the same mistake over and over again, expecting different results?
Einstein. The definition of sanity is repeating the same steps over and over again, expecting different results.
Right. We are all insane because every single election, we get manipulated towards a certain narrative by the same exact groups or agencies or people. And every single election, they all make us fight. It's as if imagine a cockfight with 2 chickens fighting, red and blue, and all around them there's a bunch of vicious idiots throwing money and salivating and making them all fight.
Yeah.
And the American people are the 2 stupid chickens, Poor, stupid chickens. And all the people around viciously laughing and spitting and throwing money at the chickens. Yeah, it's them. That's how I see it, man. It's crazy, dude, because even the election's being rigged. This has been happening for years. It's not the first election. Ron Paul was totally swept by rigging. He wasn't even allowed to debate at the do you remember the Jewish debate? It was the Jewish conservatives debate.
Yeah.
He was not invited. He was the only Republican candidate of all the candidates during the primaries during 2011's debate season.
Yep.
He was the only one not invited to debate, even though he was in like the top 5, I believe at the time, top 6.
Well, yeah. I think he was in the top. He may have been 4th at that time. It went like Mitt, Santorum, Gingrich, and then Ron Paul, I think, was the next, and he still didn't get invited.
To top that thought off, which is something I've been wanting to talk about. Trump keeps talking about, and this is something it's unbelievable. I have a clip. I'm going to show it because this is a clip where you see Trump and Trump's team, including McEnany, his spokesperson, his spokeslady, talking about how the surveys done on the news channels are only done to sway the public from being discouraged about a certain candidate. That's all. And they kept talking, the Trump campaign, they kept saying that. This is what I was saying. This is what I was saying 8 years ago, bro. This is what I was saying 8 years ago. Because everything that Ron Paul was winning on the channels, on the news, every single time, they would did you see what they did to Ron Paul? They would literally put Ron Paul's number, like being like, and if they had to put it, like he was in 3rd place, they would put somebody else's face.
Or a blank. And there's there
was a question mark, like a face, like a blank face with no picture. I remember that one.
And there was famously he did something well in the polls, like 3rd highest or whatever, and it didn't say Ron Paul or a question mark or some other name. It just said other candidate, not other candidates, other candidate. I want to find that clip.
You got into focus than Ron Paul.
But okay, listen, Tyler, this is my point, brother. Trump not only copied and co-opted Ron Paul's liberty movement by taking the anti-war stance out, using it, taking the border situation. Obviously, he was pro border, so I can't really say that because Ron Paul lives in Texas and he was pro border too. So, but more predominantly speaking, Trump took a lot of the really most essential character-driven policies and ideas that Ron Paul had, including, but not limited to, not getting paid for his presidential salary. I hear Trump is getting $1 a year because that's the legal requirement that he has to accept something, but he didn't want to get paid. He was actually trying to accept the deferment on his salary as president. That's what Ron Paul's idea was. Ron Paul's idea was also to utilize the Tea Party. That's what Trump did. And in this situation, not only did Trump copy Ron Paul's ideas and all that, but Trump also copied the same arguments that were used against Ron Paul back then, which are the polls or methods used against Ron Paul. Trump is arguing about those now, even though they were happening to Ron Paul then, including these polls. So that's what's ironic, is that history repeats itself in our country, and we, the people, we keep falling for the same stupid games over and over again, bro.
Yeah.
It's exhausting because I see them. I want to do something about it. I bring ideas to the table and no one utilizes them. Same thing happened when I was on the Tulsi Gabbard campaign earlier this year. Same thing happened when I was living in Van Nuys and I saw there was a problem with parking in the city, and I went to the city council member's office and I actually lobbied their office and I sat with them for half an hour and I actually explained to them the problem and then 3 solutions. I gave them 3 solutions. They found those solutions to be wonderful. They told me that they never even thought of those good ideas. One of them being utilizing the public, or I should say the private parking lots for the stores in the area that were big, such as Walmart, Costco, etc., to allow people to park in them overnight because there was an overflow in parking. That was my idea to a problem resolved, and they never utilized that either. It's as if we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. We give ideas, good ideas, things that can solve things, and no one gets them done except for Trump. Trump came to the table with ideas to problems, and he actually did them. China, man, if we lose Trump, bro, everything that I've been so excited about and finally shifting China, made in China products out of our lives is now going to come to an end with Biden as our president. So, I mean, that's a segue, you know?
That's a good segue.
I did want, it's crazy.
Yeah, Jorgensen, man, she didn't really try either. Like Gary Johnson was more actively involved in promoting himself as a potential nominee or potential president. But then the whole Aleppo thing happened, and that wasn't even that bad compared to. Oh God, here's a great example of the political shadiness in the media. But remember when Gary Johnson said, "What is Aleppo?" and that was like the end of his presidential bid. Like that's when he stopped campaigning because it was like, oh, I can't recover from that. But then Joe, oh man, okay, so I think what is actually happening and why she and Giuliani parted ways is Sidney Powell is going after election integrity as a whole in the United States, but
can you please state that again? Because I missed that. You said her and Giuliani parted ways.
Not they diverged focus. I'm not saying that they are no longer on speaking terms. I'm saying that they are taking two different strategies, and that's why people are saying that Powell was fired by Trump because she's no longer working with Giuliani. They just have two different attacking strategies right now, and Powell has the strategy, in my opinion, that will not be finished by election deadline time. Whereas Giuliani, he believes he's going after the votes that can be discarded, and go mainly focusing on Pennsylvania right now. But Sidney Powell is going after something that will change elections all over the world like forever. So the case she's working on with Dominion is something that might last until the spring. So like she's not, I don't think she's doing it for, I mean, yes, Trump would obviously benefit from her action, but I don't think she's really doing it for Trump. She's doing it for America. And I think that's something in conservatives are getting mixed up on. Like conservatives have this idea of like, oh, we just need Trump to win. Yes, absolutely. It would be obviously ideal for the health of this country for Trump to win. But Powell isn't doing, I don't think she's doing it for Trump's benefit. I think she's doing it for the future of America, in my opinion.
So then who's fighting the other side? Who's fighting the other front? Giuliani?
Yes.
And where is he getting with that?
Well, this week Giuliani had his
no, yeah, I saw the
hearing.
hearing in Pennsylvania, which was all kind of just a artificial setup. I'm talking about actually like actionable
right
intelligence, I guess.
Right. So Sidney Powell's going after Dominion and how it can swap votes. Giuliani's going after the votes that came in that need to be thrown out. For example, in Pennsylvania, there were 1.8 million absentee ballots sent out, and 2.4 million absentee ballots came in. So that's something Giuliani presented as to where, obviously, the question arises: where did these 600,000 absentee ballots come from? Which, like, we know, we've seen people copy ballots. You can actually watch the Sacramento like voting counting center copy ballots. We'll watch that. I'll show that.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Uh-huh. But so it happens in the politics as to where you just saw in the video, people will scan or copy ballots and submit them as votes. So Giuliani's going after absentee ballots that shouldn't exist, going after fraudulent ballots that have signatures that don't match the people who are submitting them. Giuliani's going after the dead people who voted, the 9,000 dead people in one county in Michigan that voted. So that's what Giuliani is going after. And Giuliani and Powell both, I think, understand that there is not enough time to address every case of fraud between now and January 20th. So there's just way too much ground to cover. So that's why Trump has chosen Giuliani as his main focus, whereas Powell is going off and doing her own thing with Dominion. Because both are fights that need to be fought, but only one of those two is going to be finished by January 20th, and it's probably going to be Giuliani's.
You mean December 20th?
Yeah, December 20th, but also swearing in January 20th. Because there are some states, that Arizona, by example, that said that they will not certify until every court case has been addressed.
Yeah, see, that's the other one. I was just, looking through the states, and what's ironic is that of all of these states, well, I forgot Arizona was part of them, but of all of these states, so far we've got Nevada, Georgia, and Michigan with extremely obvious discrepancies. Pennsylvania and Arizona, I'm not too sure that their discrepancies are as poignant as these threes are.
Yeah, and here's the ironic thing: all of those.
Wasn't it just yesterday they found in Nevada, like what I was telling you about earlier, about all the casinos? Like that's a huge one, man, because that points to actually somebody who's allowing this to happen. This guy. I don't know. I mean, oops.
Yeah, and every one of those states except Arizona, I think, uses Dominion.
Wait, which one?
Every one of those states except Arizona.
Except Arizona?
I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. And then so in Pennsylvania, they had the postal service involved. They had the inspectors kicked out. Right? What else in Pennsylvania? That was pretty much it, right? That's where they had the hearing, the Giuliani hearing.
Uh-huh.
But what about Georgia though? Because in Georgia, I do know that like they did the recount, but they did the recount of the same exact, illegal ballots. So why would the Trump administration even care about whether or not they should fight in that state?
Yeah, actually, someone in the Trump campaign has acknowledged that the Georgia recount was a sham. But about Georgia, famously, in Sidney Powell, when talking about Dominion, cited Georgia as they found the evidence of the amount of money was put up for a bid to use Dominion. Georgia put nearly $100 million up to use Dominion in their state.
Wow, man. Who
Yeah.
purchased it? The election board?
Yeah, the election board put up nearly $100 million.
And who runs the election board?
That's a good question.
Right?
Yeah.
Look at the names on that board. I can almost guarantee you, dude, you're gonna find some similarities to some of the names.
I'm looking that up while we run through this list.
Because you know what? A lot of the names, something I wanted to talk about. Biden's team, it's starting to scare the shit out of me, bro.
Yeah, we've been talking about it. It's absurd the amount of, and it's like the general liberal, and not saying the people who, like the good-hearted liberals, like the involved liberals, like the Occupy liberals, but the general liberal now does not care at all about Joe Biden's cabinet. They just like, oh, Trump's out. All of a sudden, everything's magically gonna be better now.
That's weird, huh? That's
Yeah.
weird, man. I still can't figure that out, dude. Still can't figure that out. Man.
All right, you ready for names?
Yeah.
All right. Georgia election board member, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
Okay, that's one.
Mrs. Rebecca Sullivan.
Okay.
David Worley. Matthew Mashburn.
Okay, are we starting to see a picture here?
Yeah, and the last one.
Starting to see a picture here?
Yeah, the last one for a bit of multiculturalism, Ann Lee.
Okay, all right, okay.
Oh man, good attempt at the names. I'm just gonna.
Just these two right here are come on, you just do a search.
Right.
Just these three are here. Berger, Byrne, and Worley. Come on, bro. That's like the name of an attorney's office, you know? Mashburn, Worley, and Berger. Berger, Worley, and Mashburn. LLC.
Yeah, and ironically.
Dude, did I call it or did I call it? Holy shit, man.
Yeah, Worley
that is weird, dude.
has a like a legal firm.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
They're all lawyers. Do you know what country used Dominion first and funded it first?
Israel.
But Israel funded it. The first country that used Dominion, per Sidney Powell's Kraken release, was Venezuela. Hugo Chavez.
Was what?
Venezuela. Hugo Chavez.
Antonio Mujica and his partner Alfredo Anzola received a small business loan from the Venezuelan government only months before the recall election. These corporate registration documents from Venezuela show the Venezuelan government owned 28% of the stock of another company they started, Bizta, which adapted voting software for the Smartmatic machines in the 2004 elections. The same document shows a Chavez government minister, Omar Montillo, was on the board of directors. The Chavez government gave Bizta, Smartmatic, and another company a $91 million contract to run voting machines for the 2004 election. The next year, the owners of Smartmatic, primarily owned by Venezuelan businessmen, bought Sequoia, one of the top electronic voting system companies in the United States, for $16 million. Smartmatic is a labyrinth of international holding companies owned by Venezuelan businessmen. Smartmatic Group NV of Curaçao, Netherlands, Antilles owns Smartmatic International BV of Amsterdam, Netherlands, owns Smartmatic Corporation of Florida, which bought Sequoia Voting Systems of California, USA. When Smartmatic bought the U.S. voting machine companies, the U.S. government did not review the sale. Many experts say those voting machines were manipulated in Venezuela to give President Hugo Chavez a victory. Exit polls done by the U.S. firm Penn, Schoen and Berland had Chavez losing 41% to 59%. But the next day, Chavez declared victory, reversing the score, saying he won 59% of the vote.
Everything was computed in the favor of the government. So the only explanation is that the Smartmatic machines had been programmed in that way.
A Harvard mathematician crunched the numbers on the Venezuelan election.
It had to be the Smartmatic system. All these machines talk to a central computer and report on their results. And in that mechanism, as they communicate with the central machine can report anything.
Smartmatic is technically based in Boca Raton, Florida, but the president of the company, Jack Blaine, testified to the Chicago City Council. Fewer than a dozen Smartmatic employees work in Florida. The majority of the workers are based in Venezuela.
See that? I heard you say something about that once, and then I heard the news say something about that, and something about that kind of struck me off. Because the Venezuelan election, if you watch that documentary, Revolution Will Not Be Televised.
Right.
Have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all USA backed. So if anything happened during that election, 9 times out of 10, it had probably something to do with the U.S., not anything to do with actually Chavez himself. He was too poor, man. He was too poor and uneducated.
Right. That's what surprises me that people aren't putting together too about this whole thing is the U.S. was involved in a lot of South American interventionism in the 70s and 80s. Hugo Chavez did not come to power by himself. He had international help by I think by China and Russia and the Soviet Union, and the U.S.'s CIA involvement helped. Okay, what I want to say really quick about Venezuela is Venezuela at one point prior to Hugo Chavez was the richest country in all of South America because of their high amount of oil reserve. And by rich, we're talking like egalitarian. There wasn't really that high level of economic divide we're seeing right now in countries like Brazil. There was a beautiful country. There were clean streets, nice buildings everywhere. Everyone drove a car. A lot like what you saw in the United States in the 90s. It's just really pristine. But then Hugo Chavez somehow gets elected and comes along and goes door to door, business to business, pointing at restaurant owners like, this restaurant now belongs to the state. Now this restaurant now belongs to the state. And there's a lot of videos out there of Hugo Chavez's reign where people who once spent their entire lives putting a business together are now in the streets crying because Hugo Chavez just took the business.
Population to stay in power comes at a heavy cost. After 11 years of Hugo Chavez, Venezuela has the highest inflation rate in Latin America and one of the worst murder rates in the world. But voting him out of power anytime soon might be impossible. That's because in Venezuela, one man has the power to do almost anything he wants. Like pointing to a building and expropriating it on live television.
That building over there, who owns it? Expropriate it.
Part of the reason Chavez has such power is that the opposition decided to boycott the last elections 5 years ago, which handed the entire National Assembly over to rubber stamping Chavistas. This time, the opposition fought and won more than a third of the seats.
We need to fight and give them the reasons and the emotions to believe that together we can overcome a government that has been taking away all our freedoms.
The opposition now wants to slow Chavez down and build a base for the next presidential elections in 2012, when Chavez, who got rid of all term limits on the presidency, will be running again. In Caracas, Venezuela, Steve Harrigan, Fox News.
And then fast forward to Maduro, and he has continued his oppressive reign. And what you're seeing now in Venezuela is mass starvation in the streets. People are literally eating their pets. And if anyone tries to give me any crap over any sort of statement towards Venezuela, I will just tell you, I know people who have escaped the reign of the Venezuelan dictatorship, and they still have family there that are suffering because of Maduro and what Chavez put in place. And they got there thanks to Dominion and stayed there thanks to Dominion. Additionally, if we want to talk about consolidation of wealth, one of the biggest pieces of information I like to share about communism is the consolidation of wealth in communism is extremely narrow. The richest person in Venezuela now, and now one of the richest people in all of South America, is Hugo Chavez's daughter.
What?
Yeah,
Really?
she has never worked a day in her life other than politics. She's not even really politically involved, but it's more of like a Chelsea Clinton type of thing. And she has billions and billions and billions of dollars. And that only happened thanks to Hugo Chavez's reign and when he went door to door taking people's wealth. And that only happened thanks to Dominion and other countries' involvement in that election. United States not excluded.